Hello and welcome everybody to a Vegan FTA Activists to Follow, a live series in which we take a look at activists all around the world who are innovating, inspiring, and creating a more compassionate world. Today we have the incredible activist, athlete, and ethical vegan Kuntal Joisher. After achieving his dream of reaching the summit of Mount Everest, no small feat whatsoever in 2016, all on a plant-based diet, Kuntal returned in 2019 to conquer the mountain again, this time doing it 100% vegan. So that's from head to toe in all vegan gear. Doing it once, wow. Doing it twice, fantastic. I can't wait to get into this conversation. Thank you so much for joining us, Kuntal.
Thank you so much. Really appreciate the invite and look forward to sharing my story and journey with you and your audience. But before I go, before we kind of have the conversation further, I do want to share a clarification. You mentioned that the second time I conquered the mountain, but I did not conquer the mountain. And something, I tell everyone that we cannot conquer mountains. As simple as that. Mount Everest is not conquerable. It's almost like Mount Everest is telling, okay, I'm going to allow you to spend some time on my top. Like, otherwise, if I want you to go home, you are going home. There's no way humans can like conquer mountains in that way. So, and on top of that, I had an amazing team of people, especially my Sherpa guide Mingma Tenji Sherpa. To be very frank, without his support or without support of so many other people who have been part of my this dream, like my mother or my wife or my friends or my extended vegan family, without support and well wishes of these people, I would have never made it to the top. So it's not like I conquered the mountain. I had so much backing, I had so much help, I had so much support, and I think with that I got on top of the mountain, Everest willing. I got there and I spent some good time on the top, and yeah, and so and I hope a lot of uh, I would say well wishes from the animals across the world, who we all of us are trying to stand up for.
That's
Absolutely,
wonderful.
absolutely. I love what you're saying as well about, not conquering the mountain. Kuntal is an amazing photographer. Your work's been featured in National Geographic and in many, many publications. I'm sure we've got the link to your website. Definitely go and check out Kuntal's photography, and it really gives an idea of, like you say, nature is so huge and we are so small in comparison. So it makes your achievement even more mighty.
So we look forward to getting into this and also talking a little bit about the trials and tribulations of this process. But before we scale the peaks of this discussion, pun intended, of course, I was the one writing this. I feel is a good place to start is at the roots of your decision to become an ethical vegan, a decision that would go on to take you to new heights, literally and figuratively. And would you mind sharing with our audience what it was that kicked off that compassionate journey?
uh, so growing up in a vegetarian family, I always had that compassion angle towards animal, because every time I would go probably into a birthday party or as like a young kid or as a young mind, I would go into these parties or I would go into dinners with friends from non-vegetarian families, and they would always have meat or eggs or all those things on the plate, and I would not eat them. But then I would go home and I would question my parents of why are they eating and why am I not eating this stuff. And then my mother, I remember once, kind of showing me that, hey, look, there's this cow walking down the street and there's cow's kid kind of following the cow. And look, they are social animals, they are sentient animals, and they are to a certain extent like us. Uh, and they feel pain, they feel kind of stress, they also feel joy. Like we have all seen this, like I have always seen happy cows. Happy cows don't give cheese, just to kind of be very very clarify that. But I have always seen these things. And then like my mother said, look, if we don't eat other human beings or if we don't eat our friends or if we don't eat other families, then why would we eat a family from a different species? Why would we do that? And so that kind of always hit me. Yeah, that makes super sense. But a lot of my initial vegetarianism was kind of built around smugness and built around superiority, if I can kind of be very honest about it. And I was like, oh, I'm superior than you, I don't eat animals, like I'm better than you. That was how my vegetarianism was always. And then life took on, and I came to the United States to do my master's degree. And one of my roommates happened to be an ethical vegetarian, which I today kind of just think that ethical vegetarianism is an oxymoron. You can't be ethical and then be a vegetarian, but I'm not going to get into that. But he kind of started pointing out to a lot of choices I was making as a so called compassionate vegetarian, where I would go into a grocery store and buy eggs, not directly, but like let's say an ice cream had eggs, or let's say a chocolate had eggs, I would buy them. Or I would go into a clothing store and I would buy a leather jacket, or I would buy leather items for me, like a purse or a wallet or like belt and those kind of things, shoes. And he would always ask me these questions: why are you buying this stuff? And I my answer was always, these are just items in a grocery store or in the clothing store. They are like nicely packed and they are just, kept on a shelf. How can a dead animal be involved in this entire process? This is just regular stuff made in a factory. It's not, there's no animal involved here. I just didn't know better at that point. And then he started sharing with me videos of essentially cruelty in the dairy industry and the leather industry, because that's where his entire point was. And then I started connecting the dots and I started doing a lot more research. I started looking into the egg industry. I started looking into every industry connected to animals, or every industry that had animal byproducts or products. And I realized that there's really no difference whatsoever between meat and milk, or meat and cheese, or meat and a leather belt, or meat and a leather jacket, or any of these animal products or byproducts. And that at the end of the day, these products come from an industry full of abused, exploited, and slaughtered animals. As simple as that. There's no humane or happy cows, or or humane milk or humane meat. It just does not exist. Not in an ideal world, not in a utopic world, not in any world. Because I truly believe there's no consent involved here. Like,
Mm.
no animal is going to happily walk to you and say, Kuntal, I really appreciate you want to climb Everest. Here, I'm going to kill myself, take my feathers, make the jacket out of it, and go summit Everest. Go live your dreams. No, no animal is going to do that. Every animal, every human, every sentient being wants to live as much as I do, or as much as you do, or as much as we all want to do. So that is, the bottom line of the world. And us taking away their life just so that we can satiate our taste buds, or just so that I could summit Everest, it is ridiculous. It is unethical. It is inhumane. It is not moral. There's just no basis for any of this that we are doing. And that's the connection that I made. And then I quickly realized that there was a massive disconnect between my compassionate thoughts, but my actions never matched those thoughts. That had to I had to do some reconciliation there. And I started doing some research, and I figured out that there's this movement called veganism. This was December of 2002. And that I was living in Los Angeles, and I was living in a place where there were three vegan restaurants a mile from where I lived. So I found a community of people, and of course, it was an online community of people. And that's where I realized that there are two things that I definitely control completely. As a privileged person, I definitely control these two things. That is what goes on my body, may it be a clothing, may it be any cosmetics I'm using, may it be any soap, shampoo, anything that I'm using, or may it be what I'm eating. That is what goes in my mouth. Those two things, 100% under my control. And that I can definitely change that, and that can be a starting point, and that I can go vegan. And I have to tell you that I went vegan primarily to take stand for the animals, and this was a decision completely centered around that. Centered around, I would say, opposition to oppression of animals, or the whole concept of speciesism. And when I took a stand for a certain oppression, over the period of next few years, I was able to delve deeper into my own self. and realized that I was still partaking in a lot of oppressive practices. Like, let's say something like a racism, or let's say something like a sexism, or let's say something like even homophobia. And unknowingly, I was part of this, or even if I was, let's say, not one, but I was probably just closing my eyes and I was just ignoring a lot of these problems in myself or around in the society. And that's when I kind of, said that no, I am going to kind of change. I am going to, over a period of time, none of these things happen overnight. I'm not going to say that I suddenly became a LGBTQ ally the very next day I woke up. Uh, Unfortunately, that didn't happen. I would have loved to say that. It took a while for me. It took me a journey to go through. Similarly, with everything, I have been brought up in a very patriarchal society, and it took me time to kind of just move away from this mindset. And I'm going to say it's a very toxic mindset. I wish world moves away from this, um, to a more compassionate and towards a more empathetic mindset. And that's the journey I have taken for the last 20 years. And I have to say that it all started with taking a stand for the animals. It all started, from that one decision that I made in 2002, that changed me from being someone who was filled with apathy to someone who went on the journey towards empathy. So that's all I can say that veganism did for me. So the only thing I always wish for is I wished I went vegan sooner. I wish this journey started sooner. Yes, I would have saved lots and lots and lots more animals. Yes, as an individual, I would have made more bigger impact, but I do think there was a lot more mindset or a lot of metaphorical changes that happened in me around veganism. Like, a lot of people will always say, "Hey, Kuntal, your health improved and your fitness and all of." People are always talking about physical attributes, but physical attributes are like just scratching the surface. They're not looking at the amount of transformation mentally or metaphorically I went through when I was able to take a stand for something. Until then, I never took a stand for anything in life. I was like, who cares? Well, politics is not my thing. This is not my thing. That is not my thing. I'm happy in my this small bubble of life, and I'm enjoying in this bubble. So I think that mere stand for the animals changed my life, and that's kind of where I feel like veganism changed my life, and that's what veganism has given me.
Oh, thank you so much for sharing that.
Beautiful explanation.
Yeah, it's so fantastic. And I know some people think it's cliche to call veganism a journey, but we were just talking about this the other day and how veganism isn't necessarily a singular point. It's just that continual evolution, that expansion upon the philosophy, the mindset, and connecting yourself more with the concept of ahimsa, to do no harm. And it's just so lovely to hear about your journey. And one of the things we love about you is that humility and open yourself up to sharing that. And for ourselves as well, we've been going on a very large learning journey ourselves and trying to break down all those other things, because each year you learn something new. You read a different packet, you find another thing, you find a whole
Gareth
another big
calls it
concept.
leveling up. We level up.
Yeah, leveling up our
veganism.
veganism. Yeah, and just that's such a beautiful explanation that you gave.
Definitely, and I love that you use your what you do, your platform. I mean, the mountain is a very large platform, but everything that you do to raise awareness of veganism. There are a lot of vegan athletes who are ethical vegans, but they don't further their position for their activism and to raise awareness. And I love that you do that. And I know that you say it's a lot of people, human nature is so often well, what's in it for me, whereas it was so wonderful you made that connection so early on, that it's not about us, it's about the animals. But I have to say, you've been on quite a physical transformation as well. I could not believe it when I heard you say in a previous interview that you were 110 kilo couch potato before making this huge change in your life, to follow your dreams of climbing the world's tallest mountain. And I understand this journey all started from a trip with your wife. You've mentioned that she's been very understanding and supportive of your journey as well. Would it be possible for you to share this journey with our audience as well?
Right. So it all started with that trip in 2009. So until then, I was again just a regular happy-go-lucky guy. Life was good. I was working as a director of India operations of a software-based company, of a software company, and things were going all great. My wife and I decided we wanted to take a vacation, and we were like listing down things that we wanted to see. And then my wife said, "I've never seen snow in life." And I'm like, "Yeah, even I was living in LA, so I never saw any snow in LA." And it was only probably when I was like back around 8 or 9 years old when I went to the Himalaya, I had seen some snow. So how about we go and both see some snow? So we signed up for this trip in Himalaya, a very small, quaint town called Shimla in northern India, and we signed up to go there in winters. We show up for the trip, and for the first 6 days, we were miserable tourists. I have to tell you, like legitimately miserable tourists. The heater in our room didn't work. There was no hot water. I would never complain of such things now. I'm like used to living in like minus 40 degrees Celsius for like long times, and I enjoy that actually. I enjoy that misery, but back then I didn't know that I was ever going to go on this journey. So we were these typical tourists, and I'm like, what kind of vacation we are here on? Paid money to get into miserable conditions, and today that is exactly what I do. Um, but so 6 days passed by and we didn't see any snow. And I'm like, this is like such a waste of a trip. And on seventh day, we found this guy who said, "Look, I know that there's this place about 100 kilometers from here, and there's always snow there in the winter. So let's go there." So like, let's go, let's drive there. What's the harm? It's the last day. If it doesn't work, great, we'll go home. So we drive to this place. It's called Narkanda, and I remember standing there. We're still not on top of the mountain. We're still at the base of the mountain, but we're standing there and 360 degrees panorama of Himalayan mountains, and we were absolutely mesmerized. But our driver was like kind of trying to fleece us and say, "Let's go home. We have already seen snow." And we're like, "No, no, no. We want to touch snow." He's like, "Okay, these guys are not going to go home. Let's take them up." So then we start driving to the top of this mountain where there's a 8 kilometer drivable road to the very top. But about a kilometer and a half, we run into a lot of snow, and our driver says, "Okay, that's here you go. My car can't go any further. I don't have any chains for my tires. This is it. You can enjoy here. We can go back from here." So my wife and I, both of us, went into the snow, like building snowballs, throwing at each other, playing snow angels. I think after like 10 minutes, we were like, "We really enjoying it. Let's just walk further." And we didn't tell our driver because we knew he wanted to go back home. Like he just wanted to drive back to the city. But we continued on. Like, look, back then I was like really 107, 108 kilos. I was wearing a t-shirt and a jeans and like flip-flops. I was not at all prepared to do a hike. But for the next 4 hours, we hiked through almost knee-deep snow sometimes over the 8 kilometer long road, and we reached the top of that mountain. I do think this was the second big turning point of my life after veganism, because when I reached the top, I fell in love with the mountains. Uh, and it was so quiet, it was so peaceful. I truly felt, uh, since you used the word before, I'm going to use the word. It's so cliched, but I felt so alive for the first time in my life. It's almost as if 30 years had passed by in a blip. And then I can kind of was standing there and looking at all these massive mountains and the nature and the outdoors, and I was like, wow, I feel alive. This is amazing. This is how I want to feel for the rest of my life. It was just mind boggling. Like sometimes in your life, you're always either living in the future or you're always living in the mistakes you have made in the past. And it's just so like the entire present is flowing in front of you, but you can't even enjoy it. Like you just always know you're never there. But when I was on the top of that mountain, I was there in that microsecond of the moment and able to enjoy in that microsecond of the moment. That's what I kind of fell in love with, that state of the mind. Mountains was probably just the medium, but it was the state of the mind that I was able to achieve. And I jokingly say without the use of recreational drugs. And I don't say people, you do any of that, but imagine getting to the top of a mountain and you feel so amazing. And I thought, this is how I want to feel for the rest of my life. And I thought maybe when I go back home and I do things that I'm passionate about, like building software, maybe I'll feel that way. Now that I've seen this world and I've seen this way, how I feel or experience this, I came back to the city after the vacation and I went back to work. I was passionate about technology, and it just didn't feel that way. I just, every single day after that day, since I stood on top of that mountain, I wanted to feel like that again. And so 2 months later, I signed up for another trip and I went to the mountains again. Exactly the same thing. Just while, once I got, like, when I hiked through the mountains and I got on the top, and I'm like, this is it. Maybe I need to do this more often. And I started doing that more often. And once you are in the world of mountains, at some point you would think of Everest. Like, it would just cross your mind at least. And it crossed my mind. And I thought, maybe I can see Everest. Maybe I can, like, for once go and, visit Everest. So I signed up quickly for an Everest base camp trip. Again, I was in no shape. But I said, maybe I'll train for 6 months. I'll get into shape and I'll go walk to the Everest base camp. And I did. I remember we were stationed at this place called Pumori Base Camp. And one of the evenings, we were all chit chatting in the dining tent and, like, just enjoying our time. And then this Sherpa guide started shouting my name outside. And I, like, for a minute, I was worried. I'm like, why is he shouting my name? Like, you don't generally shout in the mountains. Like, it's so quiet anyway that if you even whisper, you'll kind of, hear people's, like, entire sentences. So, like, why is he shouting? So, like, quickly went out, and I realized that, like, he's like, look at Everest, look at Everest. And I'm like, okay, I turn around and I look at Everest. The last rays of sunset were directly falling on Everest. I mean, Everest is this massive range engulfed by all these other massive mountains. Sometimes you, even when you are looking at Everest, you think, is this the tallest mountain in the world? Or is the mountain next to it, or the mountain next to it, the tallest mountain in the world? But it's all about perspective, right? So once you get closer, you suddenly realize Everest is the tallest mountain in the world. Everything, like, it just is massive. But in that one moment, you're like, every mountain is in the color of gray and blue, but Everest in middle, like this small black rock, is like burning golden in color, as if someone
Mm.
has lit all the snow and rock on fire. And when I saw Everest that way, I'm like, this is it. I am going to climb to the top of this mountain one day. And that's when I promised myself I will come back one day. I'm not ready yet. I know that I'm far from ready, but I am going to come back one day. I am going to stand on top of this mountain. And of course, that Sherpa guide was shouting my name because I was a team photographer and he wanted me to come out and take that picture. So that's why he was shouting my name. He was like, you'll miss it, you'll miss it. So
Mhm.
of course took that picture, and a sunset like that happens every day on Everest. So it's like so much beauty out there in the nature and in the wilderness, and we are all kind of, missing it sometimes, I feel, or we are not appreciating it enough sometimes, I feel. So that is also one of the big reasons why I took up to photography, because I wanted to capture these moments and bring them and share them with people who will probably never experience these moments, at least in my family or in my friends or in my network, where people are just in their day-to-day lives. And nothing wrong with that, it's their choice, so I'm not criticizing or judging them, but I just think I wanted to bring that and share with them, in hopes that they will become more conscious about the choices that they are making, and they will start connecting with the nature and the outdoors a lot more. And hopefully that connection will also lead to connection with animals eventually. So
Mm.
to a certain extent, even my photography is connected to natures and animals and the mountains, and hopefully even climate change, which is such a big issue today in the world that no one is talking about, unfortunately, or many are talking about, but no one wants to listen.
Mm.
Yeah.
So
So,
true.
oh, it's so beautiful to hear your passion just radiating
I
out.
want to
And
go climb Everest now. I don't know about you, but it just sounds amazing.
because I've heard that story a few times now through our research for this interview, and every time it just gets me lighting up inside, and I can just picture it in my mind, just that glowing mountain. And I'll flick the link back in the chat again for folks so they can head over to your website where there's some of that photography.
Oh, it's amazing, isn't it?
And yeah, it's just so beautiful. And with you reaching the top of the mountain there, it reminds me of what Buddhists and many religions seek to achieve is that presence of mind, being present in that single moment, and almost like that the mountains are your point of presence. And so for us, we advocate a lot for meditation as a form of self-help for activists, and a way to deal with a lot of the traumatizing and hard stuff we deal with. And so some of our favorite guided meditations always have that sort of that point of relaxation, your sort of your happy place you go to. And yeah, it's so fantastic that you've got a physical happy place you can go to. And now I want to be climbing up we've got a very big hill up that way. So
Yeah.
I don't know if I can do that quite every morning, but who knows, maybe. But yeah, it's so wonderful. And yeah, I'll flick that link in just a second, but so people can check out the photos. But in the lead up to your first summit of Everest in 2016, you were faced with many challenges, including have to call off the expedition twice. First, following a devastating avalanche, and then in 2014, and then it was 2015, the Nepalese earthquake, which was absolutely tragic. Destroyed so much, and so many lives were lost during that. But the avalanche also hit you guys there, and seeing some of the footage from that is just, yeah, it's breathtaking. I know, literally, in your case there. And so having all these challenges rise up and being faced with death frequently on the mountain, you still manage to stay focused on your goal. You refuse to give up on it, and that tenacity, we just adore that. So what was it that kept that going? What kept that tenacity burning? What kept that fire going to achieve a dream? And is there something we can potentially learn in facing our own Everest as activists, which is animal agriculture?
Uh, as I said that in 2010, when I was faced with Everest and I promised myself that I was going to climb Everest, in the hindsight, I can say a lot of things. Oh, Everest helps me become a better person. Everest helps me become a better climber. Everest is a symbolical thing that I'm trying to achieve, or I'm a better planner. I train hard and don't give up and facing with adversity and all of these things. I can throw all these jargons in the hindsight. But in 2010, what happened is that I had a calling, and it was a deep calling to a point where I could not say no, where it consumed my life. And I'm not going to say that none of this is like this is who I am, and I'm just going to share it like bare bones. I'm not going to say it's good or bad. It just every person has their own unique journeys and things happen to them. And for me, this calling just consumed me. It detached me from everything I knew. Everything. I had a family, I had a job, I had everything, but I could not feel connection to anything other than my calling. And that is the only thing that became a centerpiece of my life, just following that calling and seeing what happens in following that calling. And so, yes, I was faced with these failures where in the first expedition, 17 Sherpa guides ended up dying, and our expedition got cancelled. And then second time in 2015, we were faced by this massive earthquake which induced an avalanche. I still remember seeing that avalanche and thinking to myself, I'm not going to die. I mean, or I don't think I'm going to die. I'm very certain I'm going to die here. Like, this is it. This is the end of my life. Like, there's no running out from here. And so I'm still miraculously escaping from that experience and being alive. When I came back home, I realized that, look, I had already said my prayers. I was already ready to die. And given that I am alive and I'm sitting here and I have a second chance at life, I consider every moment since April 25th of 2015 in my life as a bonus now. Every moment that I have passed since then is a bonus. If I have a second chance at life and if I am having all this bonus, why would I not do things that I love? Or why would I not follow the biggest calling of my life, which is climbing Everest? And that is like I can like easily, step back and say, I'm passionate about veganism and I wanted to be, go on the top of Everest and put a vegan flag and show it to the world that vegans can do it. Yeah, I can say all of that, but I'm not going to say it because that was not the reason why I climbed Everest in first place. I'll be very honest here. I climbed because it was my calling. As simple as that. It is very selfish because I put my life at risk. I did not care about I'm not going to use this word lightly, but I do care about my family. I do love my family. I do love my wife. I do love my mother. I did love my father. Everything. But it got to a point in my life that I loved Everest more than everything else, unfortunately. So that is a journey that I took. And it was a very personal journey. It was a very personal calling that I went on. And yes, it was good to have veganism as a big reason why I also did this, because I was doing it for the animals as well. And that was something that also kept me going when I was down. I remember even in 2019, uh, I was standing at this place called the second step. Second step is this massive 50 feet tall rock wall that you face before you finally get to the summit. And I got to that rock wall and I'm like, there's a traffic jam here. I am cold right now. I am miserable. My oxygen is potentially running out. For the last few days, there have been tons of traffic jams on the mountain. So many people have died. So much has happened now. Mentally, I'm knackered right now. Let's just go home. That one moment, that microsecond of a moment, that feeling came. Let's just go home. And then I'm like, but I have already climbed Everest. That was another thing. That was like pushing me to go home. I'm like, I don't have anything to prove to anyone. But then that kind of why am I doing this came back. And that why for the second Everest was completely centered around doing it 100% vegan style, wearing no, vegan gear and getting to the top. And that why came back. And I'm like, look, I'm so close. Can't give up. 1 hour, if I just putting one step in front of another, I'll be standing on top of Everest. And I would have proved to everyone what I have been trying to prove for the last 10 years. This is it. I can't give up now. So I do use this as a way to kind of always propel myself in these difficult situations. And look, I'm climbing mountains. I'm not going to sugarcoat it. Things get really, really tough on the mountain sometimes. You're just in incredibly difficult situations. And I think animals and animal rights is something that drives me. There's nothing else that I can tell myself that will help me get over that feeling of giving up. Anything I say just doesn't work, because I could have said, oh, this is the biggest dream of my life. But then the response would be, you have already climbed it in 2016. That's not your biggest dream in your life anymore. So it was merely veganism that in 2019 took me to the top of Everest. Otherwise, I would have given up and come home. So that's the kind of stuff that I will use to kind of always fire myself up. But I also, one thing that I can tell you from experience of last 10 years is that motivation is sorry, I'm going to swear, but it's bullshit. It's just, totally useless emotion. I would not say totally useless emotion, but I would say it's a very fickle emotion that sometimes comes and goes at whim. And I would rather be kind of dependent on falling in love with the journey, falling in love with the process, falling in love with the overall journey and not just the destination or not just the result, and then having a very strong purpose attached to the journey. I think that is definitely a blueprint for being successful in any journey rather than depending on motivation every now and then, which is not going to get you very far in life or on Everest.
Makes total sense, doesn't it? I love that explanation. And I mean, I've been following you for a while now, and as soon as I heard of you and your story and everything you've been doing, I said to Gareth, we have to talk to this guy, and it's so wonderful to meet you at last. And I I love the stories that you shared of. I mean, I guess where we should go from here is, like you say, you've reached the summit of Everest, you've displayed your vegan flag, and that in itself was great. And like you said, the second time, you didn't have to go and do that, but you wanted to do it 100% vegan. So for those, for the for everybody watching or listening, why was it not vegan in the first place? I mean, I know what it is because I've listened to the story, but what is it about mountaineering that is not vegan? When you're already living a vegan lifestyle.
Right. So I'm going to kind of stick to two things here. One is food and one is the mountaineering gear. There can be, you can kind of take it a lot further and look into ethics of climbing itself, look into ethics of going on a mountain and pitching tents on a mountain and then putting dirt on the mountain and living shit on the mountain and doing those kind of things and kind of start questioning those ethics as well. Yes, there's a lot more involved here, and these discussions can be very complex, very nuanced, but I'm not going to kind of get into a lot of those depths. I'm going to stick to my food and my gear, both while I'm training and both while I'm on the mountain. Sometimes a lot of people consider that you can be a vegan off the mountain, that is when you are training, and then you can come on the mountain, eat whatever you want, wear whatever you want, climb the mountain, and claim you are the vegan who climbed Everest. I do not agree with that sentiment, because you can't be a vegan when you want, and you can't be a vegan when you don't want. It's it, to me that's ridiculous. You have to be a vegan or you're not. Just simple as that. So from that perspective, in the last 19 years, I have always been a vegan from a food perspective. That's not been a problem. And to anyone who's tuning in and who's feeling, hey, I have these athletic feats that I want to do, or these, things that I want to do from a physical fitness perspective, I have to tell you, through the last 12 years journey, if I have to create a list of 100 challenges I faced on Everest, vegan food would not even be the 101st on that list. So I can tell you, if I didn't require that challenge to climb Mount Everest, you shouldn't have that challenge to do any feat on this planet, any dream on this planet. So with that out of the way, the main challenge was vegan gear. And especially these can be around your jackets, these can be around insulation materials for, let's say, your example, your gloves or your mittens that you are wearing. And that is primarily where the challenge lies. Uh, Most of the gear that I have started purchasing from 2010, over a period of time, I was able to figure out vegan alternatives to everything. Right from my head to my toe, I was able to find vegan alternatives for most of the gears. I just had to look deep enough, and I had to just do a little more research. And I figured out that there were companies in the world that were already creating synthetic gear, potentially for polar expeditions, potentially for certain types of expeditions which are very wet and where feather jackets or feather insulation does not work. So a lot of that stuff already existed in the market. Where I hit a roadblock was finding a one piece Himalayan suit. When you are climbing to the top of Everest, you wear this one piece Himalayan suit when you are on the summit of Everest. And this one piece Himalayan suit is one of the most critical pieces of equipment that kind of protects you and saves your life in minus 50 degrees Celsius at 29,000 feet in winds of potentially hundreds of kilometers per hour. Now, I knew that I was going to climb Everest. So from 2012, I started writing to companies across the world that create a vegan suit for me or create an animal free suit for me. And for the first 2 years, it was almost as if talking to black holes. They would not even respond to my messages. And then in 2014, I reached out to PETA because somehow they caught wind of that I'm climbing Everest, and they said, how can we help? And my first thing was, can you financially support me? They said no. Then I said, can you help me build this suit at least? They said, yes, we can do that. And they said North Face headquarters is right across our headquarters in New York. I'm like, great, you can just walk over, set up a meeting with them, and propose them my idea of creating an animal free suit. And they actually did that for me. Their entire team went, they did a presentation to North Face, but they came back saying North Face has rejected the idea. So I was kind of, okay. 2014 went by. I kept writing to, these companies, and people were continuing to respond to me. It's financially not viable. Technology is not available. All sorts of kind of responses coming. You are the only person demanding for this suit in the world. We can't, do all this research and development and spend all this money for creating suit for one person. Finally, I say it was a cop out on my part. I gave up, bought a suit that was made from feathers of a slaughtered geese. Now they say it was humane down, but we all know that humane is just absolute nonsense. So I kind of, even like a meat eater, I just, kind of told myself, yeah, look, I'm doing good for the animals. No, I was not doing any good for the animals. I was doing good for myself. End of story. I was being selfish. Bought a humane down suit, wore it, summited Everest, came back down, and remember, after that I was invited to tons and tons of speaking engagements. And every time I would stand on the stage, every speaking engagement after another, I would be invited as the first vegan in the world to climb Everest. Then I would go on the stage and I would think, but I'm not the first vegan. Like, how do I tell these people, but I'm not the first vegan? Because no vegan has climbed Everest. Like, I can't be a vegan who climbed Everest and then say that I was wearing a dead animal on my body. That is just hypocrisy on my part. And I was being a hypocrite back then. And so every time I would come back, this would build up inside me. And I think my conscience was starting to bite me every single time I would hear this. I think now that I look back upon that time, I'm like, why the heck I even fell in this trap of first vegan in the world, or this, that. Isn't it just good enough that I am the vegan who climbed Everest? That's good enough. Why do I have to be first or second or third, or why, this? Back then, it was just even that I'm not the vegan also. Just that mere decision of wearing a down suit, I was not a vegan. As simple as that. So all of this was kind of going into me, and I'm like, why did I give up finding for a suit? I should have tried harder. I should have delayed my Everest. So I started writing to companies again. And then friends said, why don't you write to this company called Save the Duck? They have been, doing some incredible work. They are not into mountaineering, but they have been doing some incredible work. And so I wrote to them on Facebook Messenger. And within minutes, I got a response from the chief marketing officer. And within minutes, I was on a phone call with her. And she was like, we are very interested in your project. Let me get back to you after talking to our chief designer whether this is possible. So within days, I get a response that we are going to build a suit for you. And I'm like, this is like literally the first time in last 7 8 years of me writing to people that someone has said yes. I'm like, let's see what happens. So for the next 8 9 months, we went through a lot of research and development of the suit itself. And the first prototype of the suit was ready, and they shipped it to Nepal. I got the suit when I was climbing a mountain called Lhotse, and I had the suit in my hand, and then I already had the down suit with me in Lhotse at the base camp. Then it was kind of decision time. I have to go up to climb the mountain. Do I take the down suit in case this suit doesn't work? I still fall back and wear the down suit and go climb the mountain. Anyways, I've paid money for the down suit. Shouldn't go wasted or anything. So kind of a lot of things were going through my mind, but I'm like, look, I bailed in 2016 on animals. There's no way I can bail this time. And the only way forward is I have to dump this suit, the down suit that I have. So I gifted the down suit to one of my Sherpa guides. It was a $1,200 suit, and they were very appreciative of the gift because for them it was a massive upgrade. And I said, this is the only suit I have. If I can climb the mountain in this suit, I will. If I don't, I'm not going to climb the mountain.
I know we seem to have cut out of the vital point in the story. Hopefully, Kuntal will come back in very soon. But oh wow, how about that for dedication?
That's amazing, isn't it? And yeah, so it was actually sent out to Nepal, so he hadn't had a chance to.
No, I believe his connection has just dropped, so hopefully he'll be back with us very soon. But wow, yeah, because for so many of us, we often would put ahead the type of things like, we're achieving this for the animals, and some of the minor transgressions would often get forgotten about. But for Kuntal being able to do that and really put himself in there to just dedicate himself to go up the mountain, and I believe he is back now.
Yes, there we go.
I have no clue what happened because I was able to hear you. Like you guys were telling, oh, he's gone. And I'm like, but I can hear you, but I can't see
I'm
you and
still
I
here.
can't see myself. So I'm like, maybe I just need to, like close the browser and re-enter because my internet connection and everything seems fine. But anyway, so continuing the story, it kind of almost made sense that I had to climb the mountain and I had to do it using a vegan suit. And if it didn't work out, then I would come back and I would go back to Save the Duck and say, hey, let's make it a better suit. And then I'll try again. I summited Mount Lhotse on May 15th. And I still remember writing to Sylvia, the chief designer of Save the Duck, saying, the suit is too warm. You need to tone it down a little bit. So imagine that I went from not having a suit to a suit that was too warm, too cozy. I was like too too safe in it. So, but when I was standing on top of Lhotse, and Lhotse is the sister mountain of Everest, you can, from the summit of Lhotse, you can straight see like a great vantage point to the summit of Everest. And when I was standing on top of Lhotse is when I knew that it is no longer a question of how, it is only a question of when this is going to happen. But now I am going to climb Everest again. And the seeds were sown back then. And then I had a discussion with my family because they didn't want me to go back to Everest. But I said, look, this is very important for me. I have the suit works, and I want to now go and prove that 2016, yes, it happened. Great. All of that was fine. But 2019 is when I'm going to finish my dream. And that's what I did. Went back in 2019, got to the top of Everest. This time, didn't have to wear an animal. And I did take a vegan flag with me, and not the word vegan, but the vegan flag itself. So I took the vegan flag, and that's the only photo I took on the top of the mountain where I look like. But I was trying to like hold the vegan flag, and there was so much wind that it would just not stay. So I'm like, man, like when I got to the top and the weather was great, and I spent 20 minutes, I was wearing a dead animal on my body. And now that I'm actually on the mountain in like the way I wanted to, I can't even hold a flag. It's that windy and that cold on the mountain. But I was nonetheless super happy. And I told Mingma, this is it. Like, we have done it. I think it's now time to get back down in one piece, because to a certain extent, I also believe that as vegans, we are living under a microscope all the time. Like, if we make mistakes, those mistakes are going to be attached to our veganism, even if they are not. Like, if I had lost a finger or a toe on the mountain, people would say, you lost the toe because you are a vegan and
Mhm.
because your gear was substandard. That is what people would, say. If you die on the mountain, you are a vegan. That's why you died. Even if I, would like sneeze on the mountain, oh, you are getting sneezing because maybe your food is not very nutritious. I'm like, what? Look at all of you guys. You are like, having all sorts of infections, and you are running to the toilet like 20 times a day, and then you are coming back to me and saying that I'm a perfectly healthy person, far healthier and fitter than you folks. And then just because I sneezed, it's a problem of veganism. So that's how much of a microscope sometimes I feel we are under. And I wanted the climb to be mistake free, so that I would come down and say that this is it, I have done it. And that kind of finished the big project that I had in life. So yeah, that was the story.
Wow, it's we just love your dedication to it, and that's what it's just blew us away when we first started reading about it, and it's just so fantastic you go back and do it. Although it's good to know now that if I get run over by a car, it's not because of I was playing in the street; it's because I was vegan.
The protein deficiency would have made you slow or something.
Yeah, the protein deficiency, that would have been it. Well, just make sure that Kuntal's internet hasn't dropped out again, because he's probably hiding.
We're in New Zealand,
possibly.
and I
Actually,
believe he's in Mumbai. So
yeah,
there's a bit of a few
think
kilometers.
I think the veganism has affected the internet once again, and so yeah, it's protein deficiency which is causing the bandwidth disturbance.
It's the joys of live, isn't it? This is only our second live interview, so
yes, our second live interview, and so we're getting used to the quirks here, and so and once again we're failing to connect at the moment. Yeah, it's just yeah. I'm just gonna blame everything on veganism now, eh? Like,
what are we going to blame the heat on? No, you can't blame the heat on veganism. So.
I can blame that on the carnists, I can, because the global warming.
Stinking hot afternoon here in Wellington, and yeah.
Oh, here we go.
I have no clue what's happening.
It's the veganism. It's destroying your bandwidth. You need to eat more meat, mate. That's what's going to keep this internet going. That's the only way to interview. No, please, no one at home.
My computer is protein deficient.
Yeah, that's what it is. That's what it is.
Yeah, you don't need to feed your computers anything different, eh, folks? So, no, but it's just your dedication to this cause and everything that it makes us just glow inside. And we love how you use the opportunity to speak for the animals as much as possible. And through part of our research for this interview, we're looking at some of your early stories. And there's a great series. I believe it's called, was it Road to Everest that you did? It was
Call
five,
to
6 parts.
Everest.
Call to Everest. That is a fantastic one. I'll try and grab the link for that after because it's a fantastic one to watch. But we understand when you started out as a vegan, you were very keen to debate any non-vegan possible and get that issue across wherever you could. And how has your activism changed since then? And when the dream arose of Everest, did that pop into your head that, this is an amazing advocacy chance?
So after I went vegan, my life changed. So I thought this is such an amazing thing. It would be so awesome if everyone in the world was vegan. Then everyone would feel like how I am feeling. And I guess all of us vegans start out like this. Or at least I thought I'll met a lot of them who just start out thinking, hey, veganism can change the world. And I still think it can. Uh, and so my initial portion of my activism was all around trying to convince my friends, my family, my co-workers to go vegan. And like I remember instances where I would be at a product party and they would set up the product party in a restaurant where there would hardly be any vegan options. So we would go there and I would not order anything just on purpose so that my area of the table would be empty and everyone would be eating something. Everyone's eating something and I'm just drinking water would mean that I would be the center of attention on the table. And then people would all start asking me questions, why are you not eating something? Which would then in turn allow me to do some vegan advocacy, or at least so I thought I was doing. And I remember for the first 2 3 years, I was very in the face vegan guy, like all the time. Every single facet of my life or idea around my life was built around veganism. Go vegan, this will get fixed. Go vegan, this is going to get fixed. Go vegan, and this will happen to you. And that's how I kept thinking. And I realized that for the first 2 3 years, really all the change I was able to bring in some of the people was that they started liking some vegan desserts and they started liking some of the vegan restaurants. That's pretty much about it. But they continued eating meat, they continued making all those choices, and they never made the connection between animal cruelty and how food came on their plate. That's the connection they just never made. That was the connection I wanted them to make. Also, I realized that I was becoming a lot more negative during this time and getting very frustrated due to the whole thing where I was not able to succeed at converting them or succeed at influencing them. And at some point, I just took a step back and said, This is getting too hard on myself now. I am not able to cope up with this. And I am losing my own sanity that I need to move away from activism or I need to move away from being in the face all the time and telling them all the time. So I kind of, over a period of time, started doing that. And I was no longer, I think it's almost as if they thought that I was some guy who was working for a multi marketing company or something. And this multi marketing company was just vegan. So that's what, was, the impression everyone had started getting. So I moved away from that and I just started doing my own thing. Eventually, I moved to India and life took over. I got married and things started happening. The Shimla trip happened, Everest happened. Slowly and steadily, I started getting fitter, stronger, better. I started climbing mountains. I started talking about mountains. I, I was no longer talking about veganism. I was just talking about mountains. And I suddenly started having a following. And I suddenly started seeing this following connecting to me, asking me tips for what I eat, how I train, what I do, how am I climbing these mountains. And I realized that when I was turning around and giving them advice around eating more vegetables, eating more fruits, eating more unprocessed food, or eating more vegan, they were more receptive to what I was saying. And that was like one big epiphany I had where I found my, I would say, comfort around how I am going to do my activism. And that activism is climbing mountains, doing them in style, continuing to do such physical fitness feats or any of these feats that I enjoy, the portions that I enjoy. I enjoy mountaineering. Nowadays, I also enjoy bodybuilding. So combining these two, I work on both these pieces. I enjoy doing these things. I enjoy talking about them. And consequently, a lot of people, thousands and thousands, have written to me over the period of last many years. I have now given about 450 plus talks to an in-person audience of more than, I would say, 150,000 people, where veganism is a centerpiece of my journey. Like any talk I give, veganism is like the theme throughout the story. So throughout the story, I never tell them to go vegan, but then I always tell them why I am a vegan, what it helped me with. And so my style of activism is, I'm not going to tell you go vegan. I'm just going to tell you what I do. And if you are inspired from me, then there is a good chance that you are potentially going to at least consider that as an option. For me, that is my way of veganism, or that is my way of veganism advocacy or activism. And with climbing Everest, or with climbing some of the mountains, I started realizing that in India and around the world, a lot of press is very sensitive to mountaineering articles. And I'm like, this is great. If I can climb these mountains and get some unique addition to this, which is my veganism, or be able to look, I'm not someone who shies from publicity. I actually want publicity so that I can talk about veganism. So that is my primary goal. And so I'll keep trying to figure out ways and avenues where my story can be featured in media. And my only kind of when I like talk to a journalist, or when I talk to a feature writer, or when I talk to any of them, my only condition to them is you have to put the word vegan in the headline, and you have to put the word vegan at least 10-15 times in the article. I don't know how you have to do that. And then I'll give you an interview. So sure, if they say vegan boy from Mumbai climbs Everest, great. Do I need them to say Kuntal Joisher climbs Everest? Heck no, I don't care. Right, at the end of the day, we all are messengers of the movement. We are not the movement ourselves, right? So I think it has to be the movement that has to be at the centerpiece of our journeys. And so luckily, I have, my climbs have been widely covered, and every opportunity that I have gotten where I have been, like, someone, a journalist has reached out to me and they have covered my story, I have tried and made sure that veganism has been a big part of all of that coverage. And so that's another way of doing my vegan advocacy, where I can get the vegan word out. Because I don't know who's reading these articles. Maybe there are people who really don't know about veganism, and maybe they will go and search vegan online, and maybe they may get inspired. I don't know who's reading these articles. So even if it's like a publication with 10 subscribers, or if it's a publication with millions and millions of subscribers, if it's a YouTube channel with one subscriber, or if it's a YouTube channel with billion subscribers, I don't care. To me, I want to get the word out. To me, I want to constantly keep talking about it. And we don't know who, somewhere, wherever in the world, may see what video, may see what article, and get inspired. So I kind of, that is my way of doing vegan activism, which is, a, go and climb mountains, use my social media, talk about veganism as much as I can, and then through these climbs I get a lot of publicity in the press, use that publicity to talk about veganism. Yes, I have to talk about myself, and it's something that I have kind of gone back and forth about in the last few years, where how much can I talk about myself, or how much should I talk about myself. I have kind of jostled with that, but I'm like, look, it's not like I'm trying to make money out of this, or I'm trying to, like, have some malintent or anything. My only intent is to spread the vegan word. And for that, if I have to further myself a little bit, I will. I'm My end goal is to get animals out of the food system, animals out of the clothing system. Whatever I can do as my contribution, I'm going to do it. And if people have any suggestions, if you folks have any suggestions, I'm always happy to consider them and see if I can do better. So that's my vegan activism and journey.
Wow, thank you so much for sharing that. That's a brilliant insight and so much to learn from it for all of us. And I think most vegans have that angry vegan stage when they first start out. It's so easy to be filled with anger and hatred to what's happening. And when you suddenly open your eyes to it, just like, yeah, I'm going to go out in the world.
And you've changed, so everybody else has to change at the same time. Never mind that yesterday you didn't know any of this stuff.
I always like to say, if you're going to be a militant vegan, the best sort of militant you can be is a strategist, and we love how, your passion has taken over, and you've made it with your journey, your mission, your dream in life, incorporating that within. And yeah, making that whole focus around. And that leads very nicely into our next question, and that focus on, yeah, being individual.
Absolutely. Yeah, I was just thinking the same. I mean, that's something that we truly align with here at Vegan FTA, is utilizing our own strengths, our passions, and our interest to create animal advocacy that is empowered by our individuality for the collective good. Just like you say, we've each got a story to tell, and yours has gone on to inspire so many people. I loved an interview that you did a little while back with Alan Arnett's. I think, like you said, that was getting a whole. It was a beautiful interview as listening to it as a vegan, but like you say, you get that in front of a whole different audience, and you can see that other people really appreciated what you were talking about and your non-judgmental explanation of everything. And as Gareth said, I think something that really resonates with anybody, whether you're a vegan, a mountaineer, whoever, is your humility and dedication to that cause. I've heard you speak about how the mountains have the ability to remove one's ego. Being disconnected from self-importance seems like a pretty powerful state of mind within our field of animal activism, doing everything that we can, like you say, not for ourselves, but for the animals. Is that something that you would agree with?
Uh, I do think, and so just as I said, kind of, I have jostled with the fact that how much can I, further myself, like, right? How much can I sell myself? But then how do I, bring that delineation that no, but I am still a vegan messenger. So the message still needs to go out rather than me kind of, being made this hero, or me kind of being made this, guy. And so I think there's always that piece. But uh, yes, I have learned from the mountains a lot before I started climbing mountains. Again, look, I am still a normal human being. I have still my fallacies, and I still have my insecurities, and I still have my issues, and I'm working on them. I am a work in progress, and maybe I had a lot more ego before I started climbing mountains. But I think once you start climbing mountains and you realize that you are s- like when you are in the Khumbu icefall region of Everest, and you have these massive mountain in front of you, and you look at it and you're like, I'm like even smaller than an ant in here. Like one block of ice falls and they won't even find my dead body. Like that's how much I am at the mercy of the mountain. And I had again this, sort of an epiphany where I was always in this mode where I was controlling, trying to control the outcome of everything, or trying to control the outcome of my own, like what's going to happen to me. And then suddenly there was this point where I was walking through the ice fall, and then I just surrendered to the mountain. I'm like, this is it. Like just full surrender. I'm not saying that I kept my brain aside. That's not what I'm saying. I meant I was still situationally aware, but I had surrendered to the mountain that whatever happens, happens. Like this is not, I can't be controlling all the time. I have to let go of the control. I have to surrender to the mountain, and that I have to destroy my ego. That's the only way I'm going to get to the top of this mountain safely and back down safely. And since that epiphany has happened, I have a lot of ego got obliterated during a lot of those phases. So I'm a lot more grounded now, and a lot more appreciate I would more gratitude part. Like,
We seem to be having a little bit of choppy internet again at the moment. The protein deficiency is coming back up again. We'll just give it a second. Hopefully, it'll settle again. Oh, and yes, veganism has killed it again. In case you've joined late, we were joking about the fact that people always blame veganism if anything goes wrong, especially in the case of climbing the mountain and such. But yeah, it's I'm really thoroughly enjoying this. It's just so lovely to hear Kuntal's perspective on all this, and I believe he's coming back now. Hey, third
so
time lucky, eh? Like the third time revival on the mountain.
yes, so um, and I think it has been an incredible journey of just a lot of self discovery, and I do think this also kind of translates to the vegan movement as well, where I do think animals always have to be centerpiece of everything that we do. Yes, I'm not against people also kind of look, we at the end of the day, people are the ones who are going to be the messengers. And I'm not saying messengers are not important. Messengers are important as well, because they are going to act as influencers. They are going to act as that, people sending the messages. So I do think messengers are important, but I hope that messengers themselves always keep animals at the centerpiece of everything that they do. And that we cannot forget that we are doing this for the animals, just as simple as that. And to a certain extent that we are also doing this for ourselves and our own mental peace and our own conscience, uh, and that we are doing this for creating and leaving a planet for the next generation in a reasonable state. And imagine if we can set up a ground, or we can set up I would say a society or a mindset where taking care of animals, or animals kind of getting a status where they are treated like us as a normal thing, rather than like, oh, you love the animals, oh, that's so amazing. I'm like, why is that amazing? Like, always people come back to me and say, oh, you climbed Everest as a vegan, that must be so incredibly hard, that is so amazing. I'm like, why? It's just normal. I climbed Everest, sure, you can call that amazing, but I climbed Everest as a vegan. Why are why is it not a norm? Why are we treated as, people who have come from Mars or something? It's, I just feel we need to normalize veganism, and that everyone on this planet eventually adopts it, and we go towards our next stage of evolution. So I do think we need to kind of, it's only going to happen step by step. Nothing's going to happen overnight. We can't create a utopia overnight, and utopia probably will never even happen. We can't give up, and we need to constantly keep working. And I think a lot of times I was just going to use the word that we are the voice of voiceless, but I think we are the voice of unheard, is what I'm going to kind of, instead say, because animals have a voice, we just don't hear it. Animals all the time are giving us an indication. They are in pain, they are in stress, and we are just not looking at that. So uh, yeah, I think at this moment we are their allies, and I hope that we live in a world where they don't need allies anymore, or where we can all live in harmony with each other, and that animal agriculture does not even exist as part of this world anymore. And that when people look back, they say, what, animal agriculture, were these people ridiculous? Why would they be eating animals? Like, i hope that I hope that I live to see that world. But if not, at least the next generation or the next generation will probably live in that world. So yeah.
Oh, fantastic. That's such a brilliant insight, and I absolutely love that, being the voice of the unheard. And yeah, it is so true.
We need to keep leveling up, don't we? All of us need to keep leveling up.
So I really love as well, just, when you're talking about being as small as an ant within that sort of mountain, it goes to show from your story, even when we are like seemingly insignificant, one very small pebble that makes up the mountain, we still have such incredible power. And especially when we're driven by a cause, driven by a passion that is so strong, we can shift that mountain. We can be such a force for change despite being so seemingly insignificant. So for all of our viewers who've been watching this, I hope that resonates with you too, and just how you can all be a voice for change in your own way. It may be climbing a set of stairs as opposed to Everest, but like your own passion, your own individual form of activism. And so we should probably start to wrap this up, because as much I would happily talk for hours and hours myself. We're chronic ramblers, I believe is the term. But not content to sit on your laurels. We understand you're now completing. I'm starting to stumble because I've been rambling too long. But yeah, not content to sit on your laurels. You're now entering the world of professional bodybuilding, and you've set yourself even bigger goals and even more myths to crumble. Can you tell us about your next big project and completing the 7 summits, both as a bodybuilder and a vegan?
So with 7 summits, the concept is to climb to the top of 7 mountains on the seven tallest mountains on the 7 continents of the world. And I have till now, and I want to do it in the vegan fashion, of course. So I have completed Asia, which is Mount Everest. I have completed Southern America, which is Aconcagua, and I have completed Kilimanjaro in Africa. Now I had completed Elbrus in Russia as well, but I had done it in a non-vegan style. But at this moment, I have indefinitely postponed my Russia project. I do not, while I don't think mountains are at fault, and I do not think that the people of the country are also anything, but I simply cannot like unsee, or I cannot support a country that is going and destroying a perfectly peaceful democratic nation and creating instability and chaos across the entire globe when we are fighting a global pandemic. It's almost as if, the virus was not good enough to kill us each other. Now we are, literally just killing each other. That's what
Mm.
we kind of, and which is why I truly again believe that I wish people made connection around veganism, and then they would make connection to all oppression across the world. And hopefully more peaceful people means that we can all just coexist in harmony and not. I wish to live in a world, maybe I'm just a dreamer. I'm just probably going to use words from John Lennon's Imagine, but I truly hope to live in a world where there are no armies required, where there are no borders, and where we can just all exist and enjoy with each other and our differences, celebrate them and celebrate our similarities, eat each other's food, which is vegan, hopefully, and just enjoy life. I mean, it's such a short blip that we are 14 billion years on this planet. We are not even there for like 80 years, and all we can think of is all this amount of hatred for each other. And in the name of what? Some power or some stupid legacy? I, I don't know. For some history, who remembers? No one's going to remember you 2000 years down the line anyway, or the history is going to be so distorted. I would think might as well make a difference when you exist on this planet rather than always thinking about what is going to happen to our name after we go. Anyway, I'm not going to go into any of this, but I have put my Seven Summits project on a back burner, and I have communicated this to my sponsor as well, which is Save the Duck, and they are very much on board with it. I'm going to continue climbing in other countries, so I'll continue. I hope to do Oceania, which is your part of the world. So I hope
Yay.
to I hope to come and climb there. I hope to go and climb Denali in Alaska. So that's on the agenda as well. And I hope to go and climb in Antarctica, which is definitely no man's land. So I would like to be in no man's land and like to climb in no man's land. So that's the idea for hopefully the next 2 years. And yes, professional bodybuilding is something I have taken up, and I would say professional natural bodybuilding, just to kind of clarify. Uh, and I have taken this up primarily because after 10 years of doing climbing Everest twice, if I'm still getting asked the question, where am I getting my protein from? I thought maybe, as you said, I need to level up. I need to level up my, I need to level up of the stuff that I'm doing so that people just stop asking me this question. And have seen that in last 1 years, they have definitely stopped asking me the question whether I'm getting enough protein, because that question is no longer a question, because once they see my photos, they're like, okay, this guy is getting enough protein. Now let's ask where he's getting it from. So at least the question has changed now. They're no longer thinking I'm protein deficient. So I've addressed, that question for a lot of people. Now I'm just addressing the other question, which is where am I getting it from? Which is okay. It's an easier question to address, because the first question is almost like they're taunting me, but now they can no longer taunt me. So the idea is also to kind of do something that I thought was impossible for me 10 years ago when I thought Everest was impossible. And now that I go on this journey, I think this is also impossible. Combining the two worlds of mountaineering and bodybuilding, I personally don't think a human has done it. I have not seen a bodybuilder on top of Everest. Just will not happen. And I want to change that will to will happen. And I
Different
want
kind
to
of
be that
fitness,
guy
isn't it?
who stands on top as a bodybuilder. So, and as a vegan,
With
so then I can address all the questions together, especially the protein question, once and for all. Can just get out of my life, and so that I can happily then answer other questions. It's like there was this meme going around: how do vegans spend their time? And then there's this, pie chart which has like a big, massive like red circle, and then this very small green circle. And like the red circle is where do I get my protein from, and the green circle is also where do I get my protein from. So it's like literally we are spending all our time, explaining to people where we are getting our protein from. So, but no, just jokes aside, that's the newer kind of journey I'm on, which is to hopefully finish the 6 summits in the next 1 to 2 years, and then take a call what I need to do next.
Fantastic. And it's a wonderful challenge, like you say, because it's so different having, building that muscle as compared to building the endurance that you need to climb mountains. And I loved it. I couldn't help chuckling at your interview with Alan when you said, you wanted to be the first vegan standing on the summit with massive glutes, because nobody has done that. So I will be on the lookout.
I said striated glutes, like massive glutes, people can still do, but like striated glute, like shredded to the bones. That's the kind of. I was just joking.
That would be
We'll see
impressive.
how that goes. We'll see how that project goes.
I put nothing past you. You've achieved so much already.
Wow. Well, thank you so much, and thank you for standing with Ukraine as well during this trying time, and choosing to deviate the sort of project towards more other parts of the world, and performing in this other level. And it's just so inspiring. This whole talk has just been I feel like the Everest, that just burning mountain inside right now. It's like almost 10 to 7 here in the evening, and I'm starting to wonder, have we still got enough light to get up the Paikakariki hill? Like,
we've got an amazing hill behind us. Not quite Everest, but
no, it's the ant of Everest.
It's still beautiful though. I hope you get to see it someday.
Do you have any other closing message you would like to leave with our audience today?
I think something that I have shared multiple times on other platforms before, but look, if I can go from being a 110 kilo unhealthy obese software engineer to someone who went on a journey and transformed his life and created a top of the world mind and body on a vegan diet and stood on top of Everest not just once but twice, I truly believe that every human on this planet can achieve the biggest dreams of their life without any animals having to suffer or die. I truly, from the bottom of my heart, believe. And I'm just going to kind of like share one last thought is for anyone who's going on a vegan journey, aspiring to go on a vegan journey, don't think of this as all or nothing. That if I can't be 100% vegan today, that I won't be even, that I'm just going to go on the opposite side and be a 0% vegan, right? I think it is not about chasing perfection, but it is about rather making progress. So something I tell every vegan or every aspiring vegan, that even me after 19 years needs to remind myself, like, sure, for me, food is a no-brainer. It's second nature to me that I eat vegan food. But there are so many other aspects where I need to still kind of keep making progress and keep needing to learn more things. And we are all on our own journey, so please chase progress and not perfection. We are all, yes, aspire perfection. I'm not saying don't aspire perfection, but don't, like, if you're not going to get there, don't beat yourself up over it. 75% vegan is better than 0% vegan, believe me. 75% vegan is better than 50% vegan, or that matter 50% vegan is better than 25% vegan. 100% will always be best, but let's all at least get on the journey. It's not like, don't have an all or nothing mindset. Like, if I can't do it, or if I can't do enough, I'm not going to do it at all. So that's kind of the message I will kind of sign off with, that progress over perfection.
Well, thank you. That's a beautiful message to end with. And like starting any mountain climb, it all starts with one step, doesn't it? So we all got to start somewhere. Well, thank you so much for joining us today, Kuntal. This is I can't. I'm just like so blown away.
You're gonna go run up that hill now, aren't you?
Yeah. Well, you can see a fat man run if you like.
We need a vegan flag. We've got to start somewhere.
But yeah, thank you so much for joining us today.
The movement.
Thank you. Really appreciate it.
To have you. The animals are lucky to have you as their voice as well, and let us all keep being voices for the unheard. I like that. I'm going to be remembering that. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you.
To all of our audience, if you've enjoyed this, please check out the link to Kuntal's site and check out more of his work. If you've enjoyed this, leave a like, leave a comment, subscribe to the YouTube channel, and thank you for joining us with Vegan FTA with our activists to follow. Have a good night. Have a good day. Have whatever
Have
time.
a great time wherever you are.
Have a great time.
Thank you for being with us.
Goodbye.
Bye.